Well, welcome back to State of Texas In Depth. I'm Erin Cargile in for Josh Hinkle this morning. There are only a couple days left until the primary runoff with a lot of mudslinging and last-minute campaigning. Joining me this morning for a complete wrap-up is KXAN reporter Kevin Schwaller, and from our media partner, the Texas Tribune, Morgan Smith. Good morning, and thank you to both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, just a few days left in the primary runoff. What do you expect in the race for Lieutenant Governor? Both of you guys were at the last debate.
That's right. So at the last debate, we saw a different tone between these two candidates who have run a lot of negative attacks against each other. We've seen a lot of very personal attacks in this race. But at this closing debate, there was an attempt, I think, on both of their parts to kind of rein that back, tone down some of the animosity going into this last week of the election cycle. But I think that as of, this last close of early voting on Friday, we haven't really seen Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst be able to regain any of the momentum that he lost on primary night when he came in second to Senator Dan Patrick.
Yeah, Kevin, did anything stick out to you?
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's the big thing. In these past debates, we saw these really personal attacks. They were really going at each other. We haven't seen too much from either of these candidates really on the issues. I mean, they talk about the issues, but they're really focusing on those personal attacks. And one of the reasons here is because they are so similar on the issues. We've got a GOP runoff here. They're both running. We've seen Patrick and Dewhurst together, for example, in some of the education things you've covered, working together even on legislation in the past. So really, we've seen those personal attacks. But this time, we had a brief reprieve in this debate. We had them rein that back, as you said there, and they were talking about things that they agreed on. We got some interesting topics there that aren't your typical topics, talking about climate change, talking about marriage, those kinds of things. But still, coming up to the end here, I think we're going to see a lot of the same. We're going to see that nastiness. We've seen some things already with Patrick coming out again and talking about some possible calls related to Dewhurst. Of course, we don't know where those alleged calls are coming from, but we are still seeing some of that. And if you turn on the TV, if you're watching this, you're sure to see these ads keep running as we come up to Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in the interview we just saw between Representative Dan Branch and State Senator Ken Paxton, talking about being disqualified for Attorney General, which Paxton denies, have those allegations and the security scandal affected this race at all, do you think?
Well, I think that Representative Dan Branch has really tried to plant in voters' minds a question of whether or not Senator Ken Paxton is going to be, there's a possibility they might be disqualified from serving as Attorney General, and I think that that's definitely a fear that has been raised by the campaign. And, well, what happens if we have an Attorney General or the Republican nominee for Attorney General who then is indicted possibly under criminal charges or is investigated for other reasons? Does that give a Democrat an opening to, a first win at a statewide office? I don't think that we have seen whether or not that's going to gain traction with voters or not. I think we've had two police associations that had previously endorsed Paxton have retracted their endorsement, but beyond that, the idea that Paxton might somehow be disqualified from office hasn't, I don't think, penetrated into the general voters out there.
Got it. Let's move on right now. You mentioned education a second ago, Kevin. So far, it's been a major issue for Texans. How do you see that issue shaping up as we head into the general election? We mentioned earlier in the newscast that Wendy Davis wanted to have an entire debate just around education.
Yeah, and if we're looking at this campaign here, the GOP runoff for Lieutenant Governor, again, these two candidates in the runoff, Patrick and Dewhurst, are pretty similar on education. And Morgan, you actually put this article together a while ago. We've got a picture of them together here talking about education. So, these two, they agree on a lot of issues. We're going to hear a lot about school choice from these two, is what they call it, about charter schools. And of course, with Vandepute, she served on the education committee. So we can expect to see that as an issue going into the general election, no matter who wins the runoff here, I believe.
got about 20 seconds left. Morgan, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I mean, looking at the top of the ticket, as Kevin said, that we have Senator Wendy Davis and Greg Abbott who are going to be kind of on different sides of the issues. I think we'll see some of that with Senator Van de Putte and Senator Ian Patrick. I think overall, though, voters, the public out there can expect a little bit more substance and a lot less character-based attacks, just because we are going to have candidates who have different positions on the issues.
Got it. Thank you two so much for being here this morning. Great insight. And remember, the primary runoff election is coming up on Tuesday. We'll have complete coverage here on KXAN and KXAN.com. Thanks for joining us for State of Texas In Depth. We'll have a check on your weather, and top story is right after the break.